Hi, my name is John Bannon. I'm an attorney and philosopher. In today's video, I'm going to go over a very recent scientific experiment that shows that logic transcends physical reality. Now, why is it that it's such a big deal whether logic transcends physical reality? And the answer is because you can't have a God unless logic transcends physical reality. If logic that is inherent to physical reality cannot escape its prison in physical reality, then physical reality would have to always exist in order for logic to always exist. But if physical reality always exists, then it doesn't have to be created. And therefore, there's nothing for God to create, there's nothing for God to do. So, being a theist or believer in God is essentially believing in the transcendence of the logic that holds physical reality together. So, to get experimental evidence that logic transcends physical reality is very big news for the theist or the believer in God. So, uh, just recently, some physicists published their experimental results for the evidence of the existence of virtual particles. You can find that at the peer reviewed published article Measuring Spin Correlation Between Quarks During QCD Confinement. And that's in the journal Nature, volume 650, pages 65 to 71, published February 4th, 2026. Now, a virtual particle in physics is a mathematical construct that accounts for the behind the scenes energy transfer between real particles. Because a real particle exhibits the properties of a virtual particle, as demonstrated by this recent experiment, then the mathematical logic of that virtual particle must transcend physical reality. So, this experiment involved producing real quark pairs from real proton proton collisions. Um, but the correlated parallel spins of the real quarks were so unusual that they must have come from virtual particles. So, in other words, the only way you could explain this extremely unusual occurrence of real quarks produced in these proton proton collisions with having parallel spins is if there were virtual particles being produced, at least mathematically, prior to the production of these real quarks. The paper goes into detail as to explaining why that's true, and you can read it yourself. Now, the odds that this paper are wrong are 1 in 100,000, or about 4.4 standard deviations. Now, the gold standard is 5 for a discovery in particle physics. That's a 5 sigma discovery. So that's about 1 in 3.5 million chance of it being wrong. So this is fairly close to being uh, an established discovery of particle physics. They saw this consistent pattern appearing across the 600 million events that they analyzed. So, um, a virtual particle is essentially a placeholder that physicists use for the energy that goes somewhere during a particle collision and reforms into new particles. So it's a mathematical construct used in quantum mechanics. It's not a real thing. Virtual means it's not real. It's a mathematical construct, a placeholder. So this experiment shows that these real quarks had to get their properties from the mathematical construct of a virtual particle. So the mathematical logic of the virtual particle must transcend the real particle in order for the real particle to copy it. So this paper demonstrates that logic transcends physical reality. Now, you can make a couple arguments from this. One argument consistent with the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics would say that the virtual particles are real in the sense that the wave function in which they evolve is real, and that's sort of a attempt to claim that mathematics is somehow a real thing without the intervention or the appearance of any supernatural force. The other way to interpret this is that under a superdeterministic universe, where cause and effect aren't real, and therefore a wave function cannot cause a virtual particle and hence a real particle to subsequently copy it, that in that case, you need a God in order to predetermine the universe to exhibit particle behavior, real particle behavior, that is consistent with mathematical laws of physics, including mathematical artifacts in those physics or mathematical constructs in those physics. So while this experiment doesn't resolve the God debate, it does certainly allow for the existence of a God, because if logic is transcendent from physical reality, then there's got to be a metaphysical reality in order for that to happen. And God is metaphysical. So I hope you learned something. This is a pretty exciting experimental result, and I'll give you a second to read the board. All right, until next time, take care.